Alright guys, today we are going to be doing a Sterling Belikov Outdoors review on this absolutely wonderful little handgun, the Charter Arms 38 Special.
You sure about that?
What do you mean?
According to your recent poll, apparently they want me to do a review.
What do you mean? Let me see that. Oh. Okay. Apparently, you guys have voted for another Mrs. Belikov review. So today I'm going to be jumping behind the camera and she's going to be out in front again. So let's go ahead and take a couple minutes to set that up, and maybe soon we'll get a chance to look at this absolutely wonderful American concealed carry handgun from the past.
Hi there, this is Mrs. Belikov of Belikov Outdoors, and as Sterling mentioned, apparently y'all voted for me to do a gun review on one of my own personal firearms I use for home defense, Beretta 92, and this is I always get confused, the
A1.
A1. This is A1, even though my first actual experience with a handgun was the which one?
The Beretta 92 FS.
Yes. Like I said, I always get the two confused. He always has to correct me, so you might as well do it on camera. Do it any other time. But I've always, like I said, very first handgun I ever shot, I just fell in love with the Beretta 92s, regardless of the model. And even though in our last video we said that it was going to be, unfortunately, the last firearms review, but with the spirit of 4th of July that started off with firearms, we decided to bring the spirit of it once more with at least one more firearms review. And as I said in the polls, apparently the results, y'all wanted to see me do a part 2 of Beretta 92. So I'll give my input on it, even though it's a biased one. But I will give my own views and thoughts about it. So I believe I'm going to take shoot a couple rounds, and then you'll ask me what questions, and then I'll give my input on it.
Okie doke.
Hot. Full hammer. Going hot.
See what you can do as far as hitting that top target.
I remember being a lot more accurate. Alright. That is locked.
Slide is locked, so firearms is empty. Now is a perfect time to segue into one of my favorite talking points. Not to go and completely call my wife out, but firearms and firearms proficiency is a perishable skill. For years, my wife can go and tell you how often did my parents or grandparents fuss at me because, boy, you go through ammo all the time. You're all the time out there shooting and practicing. Why are you wasting all your ammo? How often did they say that?
Quite often.
So, firearms proficiency is a very perishable skill. While shooting a firearm is like riding a bike, your ability to use said firearm accurately is a skill that needs to be practiced and honed on a regular basis. That is why people like myself and much more famous YouTubers say, get out there, shoot often, practice often as you can afford to, because I think, as my wife's learning kind of, after setting your gun down and not using it for, when's the last time you shot that, babe?
It's been a minute, but I've had longer breaks from shooting this, and I still was fairly accurate on it.
So we may do something we didn't intend on doing, which is I will go and I'm going to switch from being behind the camera to jumping in front of the camera, and I'll take a couple shots and then I'll pass it back to her. All right, so Mrs. Belikov was concerned that her beloved handgun may be having some issues. So I'm going to jump out from behind the camera and see if I can tell if the firearm's having any issues. But I'm going to go and ask Miss Belikov, ladies' choice, which one do you want to start out on, single action or double action?
Since I went single, you can do double.
Okay. All right, so we're going to aim at that top target over there and see if I can't have a little bit better luck at hitting that. Now, the sights may be a little bit off on this, and we may have to get them adjusted, but for the sake of the video, I think we're just going to go ahead and try and put some more rounds through it, because that wasn't too terrible. I think out of the, 5 rounds I shot, I have 4 that I see on paper. So it may be the fact that Mrs. Belikov is just a little bit rusty. As you guys know, not that long ago, I ended up going and doing a firearms review on this exact same handgun myself in the Marine Corps sidearm video, where I talked about the 92A1 is basically the Beretta M9A1, but the civilian variant. So we're not going to get too much onto that. We're going to pass it back to Mrs. Belikov, get her to finish off this magazine, and she can talk about the firearm a little bit, about her likes, dislikes for this particular firearm, and other thoughts as to what she would encourage people to do with the Beretta 92A1.
Alright, so let's see if I can redeem myself a little bit. 'Cause I don't think I'm that rusty, but if I am, I'll own up to it. But I'm wanting to see at least one more time.
So we moved up a little bit, a couple feet maybe, not super far back.
Just a couple steps, not a couple feet.
I think we're about at like 15, 17 yards from the target, something like that, maybe. So she's going to go and fire some more shots. I'm going to rotate to where hopefully we can see the target a little bit. Go ahead and fire when ready.
Look. And see, I aim for the bottom one. I get the bottom one. I can't hit the top for some reason. And that irks me a little bit.
Well, guys, like I said, shooting is a perishable skill. The more frequently you practice, the less you are going to have issues hitting the target that you aim at. And some of that is learning to use the firearm that you have chosen to have. The other part of it is familiarizing yourself with the feel of recoil and the recoil impulse in the ammunition that you're going to be using. So the ammo that we're using today is 124 grain Monarch mil-spec ammo. That's typically what I was issued whenever I worked over at Air Guard, working with the United States Security Forces with Air Force. It's mil-spec ammo, mil-rated ammo. So Mrs. Belikov, as she said, when's the last time you shot? About a year probably, other than the 1911.
I was about to say, this one, I'll admit it's probably been a hot minute.
So it's probably been about a year.
I don't know about quite a year, but definitely been a couple months at the very least.
Okay. So Mrs. Belikov is definitely going to have to end up getting some more ammo and practicing with her home defense handgun
when we can afford it.
When we can afford it, and getting some more practice in. So, let's go and talk usage. How do you feel about, with you having smaller hands, how does the Beretta 92A1 fit in your hands?
Of course, with me having smaller hands, as you can tell, there's still a decent gap from the bottom. And definitely need to practice probably more on my grip. Hold on to, of course, I have very weak hands, so. But still very much a gun I love. I don't mind the recoil at all. It's not too much for me. I've always felt very comfortable with it. Like I said, kind of got spoiled with it being my first handgun I ever shot.
Now, what do you think of the weight on that handgun?
I've always said that this is like the perfect amount of weight for me personally, especially when compared to your CZ. That's an absolute brick. That's too heavy.
So my CZ is something like 44 ounces. I'm not really sure what that translates to in pounds. The Beretta is, I want to say, somewhere between 38 and 39 pounds unloaded. However, I don't have a scale to go and see which gun would be that much heavier, because if I'm remembering right, with a fully loaded 17 plus 1 round magazine, the Beretta actually weighs almost the same as the CZ unloaded. Now, the CZ does have an 18 plus 1 magazine after it is loaded, but we'll let people say or feel how they want to about that.
Bottom line, even though it's not a CZ review, with your CZ, you get done firing it, you can beat someone with it like a brick. Granted, you could probably do about the same, but not nearly as much damage versus a Beretta.
I don't know that I'd want to do that with a Beretta with the alloy frame on it.
Yeah, but still, my point stands. Your CZ is heavy. Beretta's perfect weight for me, I think.
Okay. So, if you were going to go and recommend the Beretta 92A1, which again is basically the same thing as the M9A1, what would you say you would recommend it for?
Definitely, especially if you're a smaller frame person like myself, since I'm around 5'6". Definitely not one for like concealed carry. It might be a little bit too big for you, but definitely a home defense gun. Perfectly good for that, having in your dresser, in your safe. Definitely a more home defense gun for women.
Now, I would say I would recommend something like that as a potential duty carry gun if you were, let's say, armed security, military, police officer. I think that based on my experiences with the weapons platform, that would be an excellent use for it.
Yeah, there were several times you took it to work with you when you worked security.
And as I said, whenever I worked Air Guard, I was issued a Beretta 92 FS. So it became a weapon system that I was very familiar with and comfortable carrying. So, what do you think of the recoil impulse on this particular handgun?
It's very manageable. It's not too much. Not anything that's going to be too overwhelming, especially if you're more of an experienced firearms handler. Now, if you're kind of new to it, it may be something to gradually work up to, but like I said, I got spoiled. It was my first one. So, but I've always felt like it was not too much, not too overpowering.
All right, guys, so that's kind of Mrs. Belikov's thoughts on the Beretta 92A1. You have any kind of final thoughts or words of wisdom for anybody?
Well, as Sterling Belikov said, definitely more practice. Of course, in all honesty, if I admit it, handguns aren't exactly my strongest point. I'm usually more of a rifle, long guns. So if we get to that point where I can show my skills with that, I'll feel a little bit better about my accuracy. But handguns definitely need to practice on. Don't need to get rusty on it, especially if worst case scenario, if I end up having to need it for any emergency reasons. I still say I don't like the ridged grips. I much prefer my smoother, but that's his preference, is the rough grips. Because to me, it always makes my hands raw. But that's, again, just a personal preference.
So it's not anything that's on the gun personally. It's a accessorizing point.
Yep, pretty much. And then, like I said, even though I have weak hands, I can handle the slide very well when my hands aren't sweaty. Having Carolina summers, sweat a lot, especially since I don't care for the heat very much.
All right, guys, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for Mrs. Belikov's review of the Beretta 92 A1. Now, if you were going to do any other modifications to that handgun, what would you do?
I mean, honestly, besides changing out my grips back to mine, not really anything else. While I know you like to do a lot of modifications to your handguns, firearms, everything, I'm kind of one of those that likes keeping it tried and true to how it came in from the factory. Except for maybe doing like light accessories. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with how it came.
All right. Guys, from both of us, we would love to wish you a happy 4th of July. We're going to try and get this video out later this evening and uploaded. Most of you guys will see it tomorrow, July 5th. But we're going to wish you a happy 4th of July to all of my audience from the United States. And happy 4th of July to y'all or wherever you're at around the world.
And if you're doing any type of firearms fun or any type of drinking, don't do it at the same time. Be responsible, please. And above all, have fun. Celebrate such a great and tremendous day for the North America.
All right, guys. Hope you guys have a awesome 4th of July. We will see you next time we can go and put out another video, whether it's another knife review, which I'm looking forward to getting up. If you don't know, I do have a knife review poll up on my X right now. It's going to be up for the next 3 or 4 days. Everybody, please go and follow me on X. You are going to get content reviews as far as knives, firearms. At some point, maybe before we end up going to Florida, we are going to be doing a fishing trip out here locally, and we're going to end up uploading that. But then there are convention reviews or convention goings on that I'm going to end up posting in August. And then in September, we are going to be doing a trip down to Tampa, St. Pete area, where we will be doing restaurant reviews. We're going to be doing some of those in Orlando, but then there's going to be hopefully quite a bit of fishing. So guys, stay tuned to my content both on X and on here. Mrs. Belikov will link my X as she usually does. But you guys have a wonderful 4th of July. Stay safe out there. Drink responsibly. And honestly, be aware of your surroundings. Y'all take care.